All right, now we're going to talk a bit about the cost of dogs, which is a refreshing change from our usual chats about the RBA, the economy, and so on, and an excuse for me to showcase my sweet 3-year-old cavoodle, Blanche. Say hello, Blanche. And, of course, many Australians do have dogs, and, as every dog owner knows, they can cost us a pretty penny. But do some breeds tend to cost us more in vet bills than others? Well, new data from Australia's largest pet insurer, PetSure, can reveal this to us. And joining us to discuss is PetSure's Chief Veterinary Officer, Dr. Simone Maher. G'day, Dr. Simone. Great to have you on the Savings Tip Jar.
Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Hopefully it's not a rough one for Blanche while she's sitting in on this one. And shout out to all the dog friends, past and present, Toby, Rufus, just to name a couple. But before we get into all this good stuff for all the dog lovers out there, I understand you have a savings tip for us, Simone.
I sure do. I have been thinking about this. Now, you'd be familiar with the concept of telehealth in human medicine, but did you know that veterinary telehealth is actually a thing? It's a service available. And it's fantastic. My savings tip is when it is 3 a.m, when everything seems so much worse, there's something going on with your dog or your cat, and you're thinking, do I actually need to head to the 24/7 emergency centre, or do I need to call my vet and get them out of bed for this, whatever's going on? My savings tip is to think about calling a veterinary telehealth service first, because for a low cost, and particularly one like Vet Chat that's staffed by experienced vets, you can get some really great advice which might not only save money but your stress as well.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I didn't actually know that those existed for pets as well. So I used to always think if there was, Blanche, for whatever reason, was coughing up a storm in the middle of the night, like, what would I do? Where would I go? So that's great to know. Now, getting into some of this data from PetSure, as I mentioned before, Blanche is a cavoodle. Where would she sit in terms of most expensive pets? Because I know she does cost me a fair bit of money, but how does that compare with other dogs?
Great question, Dominic, and I'm sure you'll be very relieved to find out that cavoodles are amongst our top 3 dogs with the lowest average annual healthcare claims from our data for 2024. So good choice there, Dominic.
It doesn't feel like that, though, because I do feel like we're at the vet every other month or so, getting her ears fixed up. She keeps getting infections, or she'll crack a tooth on something. So, I mean, like, if there are other dogs out there costing a lot more, then I really feel for their owners.
That's right. Well, imagine French Bulldogs, for example. They came in at number 1 of the most expensive average annual healthcare costs last year. And the average cost for French Bulldogs was $1,641, closely followed by Beagles at $1,428, and rounding out the top 3 were Rottweilers at $1,341. So lovely Blanche in the cavoodle group with an average annual healthcare cost of $776 is doing okay.
Yeah, it seems like that it's an ongoing meme where you can pick up like a $50 pound pup and they outlast all the $2,000 designer dog breeds. Is there anything to suggest that these breeds are more, predisposed to certain ailments than others?
Well, certainly some breeds do have predispositions for different illnesses or that sort of thing. Sometimes that's due to their appearance, what we've actually selected for anatomically along the way in the breeding process can lead to some issues that do impact welfare and need interventions. And definitely the French Bulldogs would be up there amongst those with their flat faces. They often require surgical correction for respiratory problems. So it's a really good illustration of why it's so important. If you're thinking about adopting a dog, you really need to do your research. This might be a 15-year proposition, hopefully, or more even. My last dog lived till 17. Doing that research at the start is really, really important.
Yeah, I think French Bulldogs are quite famously expensive. Not only the ongoing vet costs, but also upfront. Naturally, I think they are. Yeah, they're quite sort of the showcase. If you want to sort of show off your wealth a little bit, own a French Bulldog. Now, what are some of the most expensive procedures for dogs, Dr. Simone?
Well, one thing that our data has shown is just about any healthcare condition can lead to unexpectedly high costs, because when you're dealing with animals, just like people, there's always some variation in what complications might occur or how they might respond to treatments or different ailments going on in their body all at one time. So we do know that any sometimes even seemingly straightforward conditions can end up costing quite a bit to resolve. There are some treatments that do tend to see higher costs. Among those would be oncology treatments, definitely. But one really great example, I think, is treatment for tick paralysis. And we know that last year the average cost was probably around that $3,000 mark, but the most expensive was actually over $57,000. So it's, as I say, it can be that's why pet insurance is so valuable, because accident and illness can occur at any time, and there's really no way of predicting when that does happen the level of intensity of and duration of treatment your particular furry family member is going to need to resolve that.
Yeah, for sure. With my old Labrador, Toby, he actually did his ACL at the dog park, which is a shame because he could have been a pro football player if he had stayed healthy. But like away from the actual treatment, is there anything that dog owners can do to prevent such ailments occurring?
Yeah, there are a few things. And I think the first thing is to be really thinking about sort of all of those preventative things. The tick paralysis example, if you are in an area of Australia that is haven to paralysis ticks, then obviously regular tick prevention is really, really important and can, can hopefully mean that you don't end up with a pet that's suffering from tick paralysis, as well as that regular checkups. Early intervention almost always will be more straightforward to resolve than if you keep delaying it, thinking, oh, I'll just see how it goes. I'll just see if the lump gets any bigger. If you're worried, early intervention is really important. Just like with humans, healthy diet, making sure that it's meeting all of their nutritional needs, exercise as well, and definitely, I think one of the things that people underestimate the impact of in terms of their pet's health is obesity. That really can contribute to a lot of different, sometimes unexpected medical conditions. So, keeping your pet, particularly if it's a dog, making sure that they're getting regular exercise and keeping them at a lean, normal body weight is really important.
Now, Dr. Simone, like a lot of things these days, it really seems like pet healthcare costs are on the rise. Yeah, is that the case? And if so, what's driving that?
Well, I guess the cost of everything is rising. That's the reality, and I guess that's why so many people listen to the Savings Tip Jar podcast, particularly at this time. Uh, I think there is a shift in the way we see our pets. We've really integrated them into our family, and with that comes an expectation that they are going to get, the same level or a similar level of care and attention. Our expectations have changed. And very pleasingly, there have been so many advances in veterinary medicine. When I first graduated, things or when I was at uni, advanced diagnostics, like CAT scans and things like that. They were tricky to organise. You actually had to find a time with the hospital outside of their normal hours and coordinate getting animals in there to use their equipment. Those sorts of things are now pretty readily available and accessible. But all of these advanced diagnostics, advances in treatments, and things like that do come at a higher cost. And that is a large part of what we're seeing with veterinary healthcare.
Yeah. Now, Simone, I think a lot of people are shocked if they are in a vet and they have to front up the cost for your pet's surgery. Dogs, unfortunately, aren't covered under Medicare as much as they're fur babies for a lot of people. And it's quite common, sadly, to see vets get abused because of the surprise costs. But what's a few ways that pet owners can avoid bill shock in the first place when it does come to their pet's healthcare?
The first thing I'd say is that knowledge is power. I think you're right, Harrison, in that people don't understand often the true costs of healthcare, because we are so fortunate in Australia that we do have access to Medicare, which is wonderful, but it does mean we do underestimate when we do have to pay for, diagnosis and treatments and surgery and things like that. We do underestimate the true costs. So arming yourself with the knowledge of what those costs look like is really important. PetSure produces every year the Pet Health Monitor based on the previous year's data of over 700,000 insured pets. And there is a lot of information in there, breed-specific insights and condition insights that will help people understand what those costs might be. All of those preventative things that we spoke about before are really important. Thinking about using a veterinary telehealth service in the first instance. And then obviously pet insurance. It's there to help people be prepared when unexpected illness or injury occurs. And as I mentioned, given that it's really hard to predict what is going to be the extent of treatment costs, then pet insurance can be a really important source of peace of mind for people. And it means that when you do go into the clinic, it's one less thing that you need to worry about. You can just focus on working with the vet to get the best outcome for your pet.
Yeah, and certainly I guess that rings true when you consider the fact that, we've got limitless amounts of love for our pets, but limited budgets at the same time. And, it can get to that really tricky point when there's a really expensive procedure, but you really want, your dog to get through whatever illness that they're suffering, but then you just can't. There's no way of affording the treatment, and you're just in that really tricky spot. And I suppose that's when pet insurance can really come to the rescue and give you that peace of mind. Dr. Simone, really appreciate your time on the Savings.com podcast. Really appreciated your insights as well. Thanks so much for joining us.
My absolute pleasure, and love to Blanche.
Thanks, Simone.
Oh, thank you. Blanche gives her love back, of course.
Of course
you
she
too
does.
has.
Thanks, Dom.
Alrighty, we'll wrap that one up now.